Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Ron Barshop, author of Healthcare is Fixed, and Innovative Solutions for Employers, Employees, and Physicians. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Well, we are thrilled to have you, Ron. Are you ready to begin?
Let's do it.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Perfection gets in the way of getting it done. So action beats perfection. And for me, this was a work of passion, so it just sort of poured out of me, but it doesn't pour out exactly the way you would have a conversation, so it's not the final edit, final draft. And that's going to take a while, and that's going to get to another one of your questions, but a passion project is something that almost just pours out of you like it just has to get out. But it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be the imperfect you.
Absolutely. A couple of the adages we always talk about is don't be afraid to take the plunge, but most importantly, done is better than perfect. Just get that story out there. It does not have to be perfect.
Nice.
Well, what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
But this is something that we talk about once we become authors. We talk to a lot of other folks, and it's always so getting the thing poured out of you, and it's a thing. I mean, it's almost like a living, breathing volcano or a thing that erupts out of you. But it's not a easy thing to finish for those of us who have attention deficit disorder, which is about every CEO that I know. In fact, I would call that the CEO's disease. So we're really good at visioneering. We're really good at macro and the micro of getting all those periods and dots and dashes and answering all the questions of, in my case, my editor drives them nuts and me nuts because it's not my strength. So it's a labor of love, and then it becomes a labor of hate towards the end, frankly.
Yeah, definitely, especially with the editing, the proofreading, going through all minutia. I mean, it really can be a process.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you're using in your book launch that is working well.
Well, we're going to launch it actually this week. And what we're doing is we're releasing on a select basis as I give talks. So I haven't spoken, Paul, in 40 years, but I now have 4 talks scheduled for very large audiences, totaling about, sorry, my alarm went off. We're going to have to answer that one again. I apologize for that. Okay. Sorry, Paul.
No problem.
I
Please
haven't
continue.
I haven't spoken in 40 years until 2 weeks ago. I spoke in front of a group of several hundred physicians in San Francisco at an innovation conference. I spoke in front of 450 real estate developers at a commercial real estate conference. I've got a speech next week in front of the largest practice managers group in Texas. And then I've got another talk scheduled for about 400 CEOs in Houston. So quite a diverse audience. Sounds like it'd be a different message, but the book actually addresses in its own very title every one of those audiences. And I'm giving away the book for free initially. I have several thousand followers on LinkedIn, and I'll announce the book probably in the next couple of weeks, the audio version. So I'd let the audio go out first and recorded it professionally with my lousy voice. I'll never do that again. That is a exercise in torture.
Oh, yeah.
But the audiobook's easy to release because people can listen to this nice book in about 3.5, 4 hours. It's a plane ride, and they'll get the idea. And there's a series of books that come behind it that also answer the question: is who out there is fixing healthcare and doing it in a major way, where it's holistic. So giving it away for free to get a little bit of traction. But then I've also got, as I said, thousands of followers and then thousands of listeners on my podcast. In 1 year, we've got, I was told yesterday, something like 4,500 tune in every month. I'm sorry. So I'm pretty proud of that for a niche like healthcare, and it's really the right listeners. It's a good suite. So look, to become a bestseller on Amazon, we're talking less than a couple hundred books. I suspect I'll be able to sell a couple hundred books for getting the word out on this and getting it away for free initially, and then we'll charge minimal for getting it out after that.
So with your book, was it the fact that you have this book is what has opened up the speaking opportunities?
Yes, I think so. Again, I'm not terrified of speaking. I spoke in front of my graduation at University of Texas at Austin, my junior and my senior year. I just haven't found an occasion to want to speak. But now, there's a lot of interesting things that are coming out in healthcare, and there's a big sea change happening. So there's a lot I want to talk about. And apparently people are telling me I have something interesting to say. So they're kind of finding me. But in essence, there's nobody that really seems to be, I don't know, out there speaking the truth, because there's a lot of fear out there to tell the truth in healthcare. A lot of folks are very afraid of getting squished by these large insurance companies. And so they're just afraid to tell the truth because they're worried that they're going to get audited or get a recoupment or find a sad or scary letter on their mail. I don't worry about that too much because none of them have a big enough clout to make a giant difference. Very excited to tell the truth.
Excellent. Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
I'm going to get the title wrong because it was so long ago. Paul, I think it's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It could have a little different title than that. I think that's what it was called. And he was a Holocaust survivor, and he wrote the book in his head. And then we started with chapter 1 through 6, so we can see if he had memorized the whole thing. And it kept him alive during a very troubling, trying, physically almost impossible time in his life. But it kept him going as his reason for living. And in the end of the book, he concludes really the most remarkable thing is that there's two races of people, the just and the unjust, the decent and the indecent. And that's it. There's no other races of people. And just, you can't look at people the same way when you meet them anymore, no matter what prejudices you were raised with, what you come to the table with. You start looking at people, these are either good, decent people or they're not. And that's how you're measuring folks. And it's just, it's got me in trouble because I've trusted people that are really good at hiding their true intentions. But when you spend your time with that kind of an optimism and full, half full glass that everybody has a chance to be decent until they prove themselves otherwise, it's really it's kind of a nice way to live life.
I love that. The just and the unjust, that definitely breaks it down. So for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Well, from Dante's Inferno, this is called, everybody's heard of that. They know something about hellishness or hell, but it's a simple line in there, and it says, from a mite's flame followeth a tiny spark. A mite's flame, the written word is a tiny spark. The written sentence is a tiny spark. The written thought can literally change minds and bend people into a movement. And that's really what I hope to create with my book series, is a movement to completely retrofit how we think about healthcare so that everybody wins in a future with this healthcare that's of the future, and not people feeling so oppressed as they do today if they're a patient, a doctor, an employer, an employee. It just feels oppressive. It feels like a DMV visit. It feels like you're walking in a maze with a cornfield with a guy with a hatchet chasing you behind you. There's too many pitfalls and traps. And I see a future that has everybody turning out to be a winner. And that, to me, is a movement. And that's a spark that follows a mighty flame, if that makes sense.
I love that. Tell us that quote one more time. That is powerful.
So this is from Dante. A mite's flame followeth a tiny spark.
Love it. Well, Ron, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. Ron, I want to thank you again for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Yeah, LinkedIn is really the best way. I'm very active on that. And I respond to pretty much everybody. I'm very open to communicate with anybody who wants to take a hard look at making sure healthcare is a future for them that everybody wins in as well.
Well, Ron, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
You too, Paul. Thanks for your attention and your time.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.